Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Oh, Phil Murphy, I'm never going to get over this. Oh, I'll show you. I've got an illegal immigrant living in my slave quarters above the garage. I got my own illegal immigrant.
Well, also, Larry, I know, but listen, imagine that person who was watching the TV and shut up. Shut up. What are you doing?
She's right above the garage. Living in an apartment above the garage. The code on the door is 7623. There. I dare you to come get her. Andale. Ay, caramba. I'm not going to say Phil Murphy is sheltering a Latina maid in his garage, but I think Phil Murphy is sheltering a Latina maid in his garage. It is 6:07 here on O'Connor and Company. At 7:05, we'll talk to Eli Lake about Netanyahu visiting Trump. 7:35, our pal Nick Minnock over at Channel 7. 8:05, Don Bentley. He's writing the new Mitch Rapp series there, and he's got some thoughts on this Black Hawk pilot and some of the things that have been said about her. And then at 8:35, Samantha Jo Roth covering the Congress for the Washington Examiner. That's Julie Gunlock. I'm Larry O'Connor, and we're making fun of Phil Murphy.
Yes, we are. So much
I think
fun.
we covered everything there.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to me that Democrats are in a shambles right now. Let's face it. No one is leading the party.
Yep.
They just had the most outrageous process of choosing their new chair and vice chair, and they ended up with the guy who brought us Tim Walz in Minnesota and David Hogg as their vice chair. This is amazing. They have no messaging, and I guess they've decided through their minions in the media and their propagandists that the best messaging they can come up with is that it's outrageous that Donald Trump, the man who was just elected president, is examining how taxpayer money is being spent.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's me, but I think that's kind of a winning message, isn't it? I'm your president, and I'm going to go make sure that taxpayer money is being spent on appropriate things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially focusing on this USAID agency nobody knows about, but it's 1% of the budget, I think, or close to. It's tens of billions of dollars they spend.
It's really been interesting this week to watch this, and I know you want to lay this out, but really quickly, it's been interesting to watch this, and particularly some testimony from Joni Ernst, Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa, who has been in the news for other reasons lately, but it was interesting.
Well, she's really bounced back. She was really skeptical of Pete Hegseth.
Yes.
She she suggested that she might not vote for Pete Hegseth, and MAGA voices kind of said, "Hey, Joni, you've got a primary coming up," and now she's like, she's dressing like the woman who wears the MAGA dress on the red carpet at the Grammys. She shows up.
Well, she it's interesting. She has actually been working on government reform for many years and looking at these agencies, and so she's one of Musk's sort of contacts on the Hill, sort of running and managing and helping with DOJ. And she revealed basically that she had tried to investigate USAID and was threatened by USAID staff and some of their supporters. And so you have a U.S. senator trying to get a hold of this and really got this sort of gangster reaction from the D.C. insiders that want to protect this bureaucracy.
I mentioned one story yesterday that USAID-funded workers were infiltrating HIV aid agencies in Cuba under the guise of, we're going to help stop the spread of AIDS in Cuba, but at the same time, we're actually working to change hearts and minds to overthrow the government of Cuba. And some people may look at that and say, listen, that's a worthy thing to do. And USAID works hand in glove oftentimes with State Department, and I'm using quotation marks with my fingers when I say State Department, because this is the State Department that has a good relationship with our friends in Langley, right? And I get it, and that's good stuff, and they should be doing that stuff, okay? I understand.
Sure.
Here's the problem. Under the Biden administration, and partly under the Obama administration, USAID has turned into a giant left-wing, woke money laundering
slush
firm that
fund.
Isn't just – it's a slush – yeah, great way to put it. And not only have they been – utilized for not pro-American, pro-democracy, anti-communist, anti-authoritarian programs, but actually just radical left-wing woke projects, not just around the world, but here at home against American citizens. They were used to censor people on social media, this money was, and to promote left-wing ideas. Look at the $2.5 million to promote DEI initiatives in Serbia, $70,000 for a DEI musical that was staged in Ireland. By the way, every musical is a DEI musical. All right, you don't need to identify. Give me a break. Have you seen a musical recently?
It's a green woman leading a musical right now.
We're going to give you money to put out a musical, but you better make sure it's inclusive. Okay. This is how we get the all-lesbian cast doing 1776. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia and $32,000 for a trans comic book in Peru. What's with all the trans? You know what? If trans is so natural and so normal and so ubiquitous, why do you keep having to fund things promoting it? It was also used to promote transgender storylines in video games.
Yep.
This money for USAID. So Trump's in there, shuts down all of the funding and says, no, we're not going to spend American tax dollars on this subversive stuff. That's why I got elected. Everybody went insane, absolutely insane. And I have to say, real fast, Marco Rubio has really done a good job here because technically this falls under the State Department.
Yes.
And he said, absolutely, he shut it down. Rubio is kind of, somebody referred to him yesterday as comeback player of the year. I have to say, so far, he's really wearing the new job well. And he's done an Al Haig there. He stepped in and said, I'm in charge of USAID. Well, I am acting director of USAID.
They very quickly realized that there's no sort of incremental saving this organization. First of all, it is filled with bureaucrats who do not see themselves as Americans or their mission as to help spread the message of hope and democracy and freedom of America. It is simply, they see themselves as global citizens. They see themselves as handing out money to but again, with no ties to America. And that it's their money. It's their money. Exactly.
Well, yes. Oh, is it Stephanie Power?
Samantha Power.
Yes. I do this every time.
Yeah.
Samantha Power, who was Obama's ambassador to the United Nations, when she took the side of the terrorists and threw Israel under the bus. Yeah, that's the woman. She was in charge of this under Biden. And boy, she better be keeping all of her emails because we need to follow the money here and follow the paper trail. Let's hear from, you know what, we've got a little bit more. I want you to hear from Marco Rubio yesterday, who addressed this specifically and talked about what's been going on with USAID. Everyone who says, this is just Trump and Elon and a power grab. No, again, stop calling Elon Musk an oligarch. Oligarchs don't come in to a government and start shrinking it. Okay, oligarchs don't take over a government and then lessen that government's power and influence. It's quite the opposite. Right. If he's an oligarch, he's the worst oligarch in the world.
He doesn't understand what an oligarch is.
Yes, exactly. All right. Little bit. I want you to hear from Marco Rubio, which you will in just a moment, and some more things that your money has been funding through USAID. And everyone who says, "Oh no, yeah," I understand. There's a lot of old school types who have worked with USAID agencies and gone to, contractors, as it were, and overseas representatives who have done really good things through USAID. That's not USAID anymore. I'm sorry, guys. What used to fight the commies through USAID-funded programs during the Reagan and the Bush years, not anymore. Nope. Now it's the woke army that's being funded by USAID, and it's got to stop. And by the way, Trump did not want to end USAID. He wanted to look at what it was doing and freeze its funding until he could get a handle on it, and that's when they all went nuts and left and shut down. That's right. That should tell you something, okay? Right. It's 6:15.
MAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do.
That's
get the
Press
fraud,
Secretary Caroline Leavitt yesterday literally bringing receipts and showing them to the media there, and that's the drop the mic moment. I don't know about you, but I don't want American taxpayers paying for this crap.
Yeah, there's also some infrastructure building projects that I think people should, because we've heard multiple examples of this trans stuff. But look, USAID spent $335 million on a diesel-fueled power plant that just sat there because Afghans couldn't then afford to import the diesel. $300 to $500 million on a dam that was deemed too unsafe to use, so it just sat there. $250 million on a partial road that then deteriorated. This is my favorite. A contractor built a $500,000 USAID money police training facility that melted when it rained because it was made of sand. I mean, these are legitimate. DOD paid almost $500 million for 22 cargo planes that were then deemed unsafe to fly and were sold as scraps for $30,000. Okay, so this, I just want to point out other examples here, because this is infrastructure, this is nation building, this is support of facilities that, again, totally wasted. There's no accountability. Nobody got fired. Nobody got fired for these things.
And meanwhile, China goes into a country like that and actually brings asphalt and actually builds roads and actually makes friends. So things happened rapidly yesterday, as as you said, Senator Joni Ernst said, listen, if there are good American programs under USAID's authority, then put it under the State Department and we make sure we have proper oversight. Senator Joni Ernst saying that we need to have proper oversight created mayhem yesterday with people at USAID deleting emails, deleting their the website, shutting down and locking offices, leaving the job. They refused to have any oversight. By midday, Marco Rubio was positioned and put in charge. He spoke with reporters as he was traveling. Let's start with cut 6 here, if we could.
Look, I mean, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so. So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States. And
that's the problem. That's the problem, because as of now, they've been aligned with the policies of the deep state, regardless of who the president and the secretary of state is. You've got a new secretary of state, a new president, they have a new agenda, so they go in and say, okay, USAID, you're not going to do all the junk you've been doing before, you're going to do this stuff, and they're all freaking out. Cut 7, Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, had some simple questions for the people who run USAID and spend U.S. tax dollars around the world in our name, and they didn't want to answer any of his questions. Listen.
And so I'm very troubled by these reports that they've been unwilling to cooperate with people who are asking simple questions about what does this program do, who gets the money, who are our contractors, who's funded. And that sort of level of insubordination makes it impossible to conduct the sort of mature and serious review that I think foreign aid writ large should have. We're spending taxpayer money here. These are not donor dollars. These are taxpayer dollars. And we owe the American people the assurances that every dollar we are spending abroad is being spent on something that furthers our national interest.
By saying these are tax dollars, not donor money, because they're acting like this is one of those big George Soros-funded groups that can pay for all of this activist stuff.
Yeah.
That's what they've been using it as you called it, a slush fund.
It's a slush fund.
For left-wing causes. And Democrats were going nuts yesterday. After all of this was going down and Trump said, fine, shut down their offices, block their access to their emails. We want to see because they're acting like they've been doing something wrong. Here is Ilhan Omar, cut 11, screaming about it.
It is really, really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like.
No, actually, it isn't. But this is amazing to me that the American people vote for a president to do specifically this kind of thing. He is managing and controlling an agency of the executive branch of government that he has direct responsibility for, and Democrats see that as a coup dictatorship power grab.
It is pretty clear.
Makes no sense.
It is pretty clear, despite all of those, during the election, all of these Democrats screaming about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy. What they were really concerned about is that Donald Trump was a threat to the bureaucracy that has been so profitable for them. And now they're really afraid of these audits, which are going to show that
and has done their bidding.
Yes.
It has done it's been their little toy to do their bidding everywhere. It is 6:23.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:37, O'Connor and Company. Unlike the governor of New Jersey, neither Julie Gunlock nor I are harboring illegal immigrants in the slave quarters above our garage. But apparently the New Jersey governor... my favorite part of that is that the press team, the comms people for the governor, said, "Oh, God, what has he done now? Oh, seriously? All right." And the best solution to do damage control was to tell the New York Post that he was lying the whole time.
Right.
It was like, that's the best path. We've got a mess here. Tom Homan says he's going to come in and arrest the governor and the illegal immigrant. What do? I know. Let's just say he was full of it. Let's say he was BSing, okay? All right, New York Post, get off our back. The guy's a liar. Okay, you happy now?
Meanwhile,
it's like, okay.
Meanwhile, the maid is like in hiding now. Good job, Governor.
It's 7:05. We'll talk to Eli Lake about Netanyahu visiting Trump. 7:35, Nick Minnock, Channel 7. 8:05, Don Bentley, who writes the Mitch Rapp series of books now. And 8:35, Samantha Jo Roth covering Congress for The Examiner. That's Julie Gunlock. I'm Larry O'Connor. And it's a fun but busy morning. But it's not so fun in Arlington County, Virginia right now, as parents are still outraged that the school board set up policies that encouraged a transgender male posing as a woman repeat sex offender to expose himself in a locker room at a local high school in front of children. And Nick Minnock, our guest coming up at 7:35, took his camera and microphone to the parents of Arlington County to get their opinions. Let's listen to a little bit of it. Cut 18 here.
The district leadership failed to take the report seriously.
I'm asking for a full investigation by an outside party.
One after one, several Arlington residents called for accountability and change after Arlington Public Schools allowed 58-year-old Richard Cox to use the girls' locker room at Washington Liberty High School because Cox identified as transgender. 7 News was the first to report that Cox is a registered sex offender with a lengthy criminal record. Some women have said Cox was using the girls' locker room for at least 5 months. Cox was charged in late October for allegedly exposing his genitals to women and girls in the APS pool locker room after school hours.
And the person wasn't arrested until October. And since October, there's been no public statement by this board outside of Duran's statement and what's been said here tonight. That's a huge gap of time where nothing has been substantively changed within the policy to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Duran, by the way, is the superintendent of Arlington Public Schools, Dr. Francisco Duran. No, not that kind of doctor. If you hurt yourself over at Dr. Duran's house, you're screwed. He can't help you. He's a doctor of education, and they're the ones who really insist on putting the doctor in there, aren't they? The PhDs in education.
Absolutely. Yep.
Dr. Francisco Duran spoke. By the way, the chyron under his name says Dr. Francisco Duran, he, him, his.
Of course.
Goes out of his way to make sure all his pronouns are there for everybody at these school board meetings. Here's more, cut 19.
We did not knowingly admit a sex offender into any of our aquatic facilities.
Superintendent Francisco Duran said APS will now improve security protocols for signing into schools and pools, which includes ID checks against the sex offender database.
This system will be in place no later than the end of February.
Several parents said that doesn't go far enough and they want the school board to stop allowing people to use APS locker rooms and bathrooms based on gender identity.
I understand that the policy is intended to be inclusive of transgender individuals, but we must ensure that at the same time, we are continuing to protect other vulnerable populations, such as our children.
It's time for the school board to end the preferential treatment of biological males, including those who identify as female, over biological women and girls.
Amen.
Now, by the way, for people who are watching this and saying, well, that's Arlington and they're getting the school board they voted for and that's what they get. And I understand that sentiment. You're right. But can we just stop the politics for a second here? These are children we're talking about. These are little girls we're talking about. And this needs to be fixed immediately, not by the end of the month, Dr. Duran.
Look, this is also...
Can I just say something real fast? If this were his daughter who had to be subjected to this, I don't think he'd say, you know what, by the end of February, we're going to put a stop to this.
He'd do it immediately. He'd do it the next day. Although, I don't know. When you hear these parents pushing their own children to sort of experiment with their gender, if you will. Some of these parents are sickos. They push their own children into this. So who knows? But I want to say something too. Okay. Yeah. Especially this Superintendent Duran. The man that they allowed in, this repeated sexual sex offender that they allowed into this girl's bathroom. Okay. Because the excuse is, we did not knowingly admit a sex offender into any of our aquatic facilities, but you did knowingly. Right. You did knowingly, because there's no doubt about it, admit a man into a little girl's locker room. And let me tell you what this man looks like. Okay, you seen Silence of the Lambs? He looks like Buffalo Bill. Okay, this isn't a man. Murderer. This isn't a man trying to pass as a woman. He looks terrifying. And he looks like a balding older male. Okay, so this excuse of we didn't knowingly admit a sex offender, whatever, but you did knowingly put a man in a little girl's locker room. What a sicko this Superintendent Duran is. And also to drag your feet until February, you're absolutely right. This should be done immediately.
As you know, President Trump, upon taking office, signed specific executive orders and actually specifically empowered Title IX to be rewritten properly, unlike what the Biden administration did, having to do with transgender policies and such. We're back to normal now, thanks to this president, and that's what he ran on. And America First Legal, after seeing those executive orders, they have literally served notice to the school boards of Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William County, saying there are new executive orders in place, and if your school systems, bathrooms, locker rooms, and policies do not adhere to the president's new executive orders, we're suing you under the civil rights laws of the United States of America. Ian Pryor announced that yesterday on behalf of America First Legal, and we are looking forward to seeing how that develops. More on this story out of Arlington coming up at 7:35 with Nick Minnock. Right now, it is 6:44. Well, it's finally happened. First Lady Melania Trump is featured on the cover of, well, I don't know, is this technically a fashion magazine? It's Hello Magazine.
It's like British People Magazine.
There you go. British People Magazine, but it's something. It's a start. And I predicted the first cover that featured Melania Trump. Now, I specifically said about a fashion magazine, like a Vogue or a Vanity Fair or Cosmo. Or I don't know. What are the fashion magazines? I'm showing my
Elle, Cosmo, yeah.
The copies will shoot through the roof. This is a British magazine, but I think it is available here in America. Is it not? Hello? Yeah. And Hello is now featuring Melania Trump. By the way, a lovely photograph of her.
Yes.
Obviously, on the cover of Hello magazine. And the editorial is actually Now, she was not interviewed for this, so this was a profile about her without her participation. But it's rather positive, I think, actually.
Yeah, good.
Now, does this count? It's a digital cover. Is this still a actual print magazine? Because they're referring to this
I believe
as the
Hello
digital
is a print magazine. That might only be in the UK. I'm not totally sure. I don't see Hello print magazines in the grocery stores. I'm sure maybe if you go to a specialized like news, where they have all the newspapers and all that stuff, maybe they have print versions. But anyway, look, I'm thrilled to see her on a cover. Period. She deserves it. She's gorgeous and it's very fitting. So she looks great.
And it features an exclusive interview with the photographer who took that iconic picture of her, the official portrait, that black and white shot of her looking pretty badass. The headline is Melania Trump 2.0 exclusive photos and insight as she returns as First Lady. Subheadline, in a world exclusive, FLOTUS's Inner Circle take us behind the scenes to reveal how the president's wife is back and ready to take the world by storm. She deserves it. She's a classy woman. She's been through hell. And hopefully this is the first of many. But well done, Hello Magazine.
Yes.
We applaud you for putting our beautiful First Lady on your cover. May you sell many, many copies.